Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Jennifer has brought in the coolest toy in the entire planet, and we're going to play with it. But she needs to help me set it up, so that should come alive. Jennifer's mother does ultrasound. What type of ultrasound?
She does PICC lines, which are for people that have to have IVs for like long term. So people that are bedridden or that need to go home with an IV to get medication. She puts those in. And her company gave her an ultrasound machine, so I brought it.
And we're going to use it for way more fun stuff than finding where IV lines go, because that's really depressing. So, what you need to do ultrasound is goop. That is the technical term for it. Actually, it's ultrasound gel. Who would like to see their tongue? Come on down. Now, we've played with this for... Oh, yeah, we want to see the hole in yours. I don't know if that'll show, but we'll try. Come on. No, you first. We can do a few. So what we found when we played with this in my office this morning was that the base of the tongue seems to show up pretty well, the tip of the tongue less well. So what we'll have you say are E-ah, E-ah, E-ah. E-ah, yeah, E-I, E-I-O. Almost. Come close.
This stuff is gross.
It is gross. It's goopy and gross, but it's
Cold.
for science.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't warm it up for you like they do when they check babies. So.
No paper towels over there.
Yeah, we do have paper towels. See, we thought ahead. All right, now we figured out, you need to come to me. We figured out that the best placement is along here. It took a little bit to play with that. I wasn't quite positive. Okay.
It's not on the screens for them to see, though.
It's not on the screens for them to see. Okay, go ahead and put it on the screen. Thanks.
I still can't see.
No, don't play with that. They'll fix it.
Okay.
Why is it showing that? We need...
They're too far over.
Yeah. Can you... That's weird. I thought it would show the whole screen. I'm going to get it gooped up.
Oh, you want me to try to move it?
Can we get rid of that side of it?
As it goes, can you move it? Can you grab it and move it to the center of the screen? Yeah!
Oh, that's weird.
Oh, that's going to work.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
All right.
No, we can't.
Step forward. Act natural. Did you... Okay, now I
We
can't
can't
see it
see
on
it.
there. Why not?
Because this has to
Oh,
be
yeah, you can only see it on
far
there.
enough over.
Oh, that's going to break my neck.
I think my double chin's in the way.
I don't think so. Okay, just do the rainbow passage, just so we can get general movement. When the sunlight strikes raindrops in the air, they act like a prism and form a rainbow.
What?
You guys will all have that memorized by next year. I just want to get general movement first. When the sunlight strikes raindrops in the air, they act like a prism and form a rainbow.
When the sunlight strikes raindrops in the air, they act like a prism and form a rainbow?
Tell me what you can see. I can't watch it at the same time.
I can see a little bit of movement, but
Yeah,
it's
just
not
a
like
little bit like on the far right
distinguished.
corner.
Okay, can you find where the gap is between the hard palate and the tongue?
No.
Not yet. Okay, try it again. Now try E-ah, E-ah.
E-ah, E-ah.
Can you see any movement? You guys need to be my eyes.
E-ah, E-ah. Yeah, you can see it. E-ah, E-ah.
So is the base of the tongue doing something? So it should be high for E, low for ah.
E-ah.
The space above it would be the air gap between the tongue and the hard palate.
E-ah, E-ah.
Let me see if I can move it forward.
I'm not sensitive.
Try the E-ah again.
E-ah, E-ah.
We can probably move the laptop onto this desk and then you can
See that way.
see this way, I would think.
Yeah, that might help. So what other sounds would have a tongue body contrast? Like ra, re, oh, try R and L. Let's see if there's any difference with that.
Yeah, that should be okay.
If we don't
okay.
touch it.
It's like I have dog slobber on my chin. That's what it feels like. It's like dog
All right,
slobber.
put your chin down.
Okay.
There you go. Try ra, la.
Ra, la.
Okay, I'm not seeing anything there. Ra, la.
Ra, la.
Try
Ra,
it forward.
ra, la.
Okay, I can see movement, but I'm not seeing distinguishing movement. Try it again.
Ra, la. We do it back like all.
Okay, so the first bright line, when you're moving up from the bottom, is where the top of the tongue is. So that's the superior surface of the tongue. Try ra la again.
Ra, la. Ra, la.
All right, we're not going to help any people with a Japanese accent with this, I can tell. Try one more time. Ra la.
Ra, la.
Okay, I'm not getting enough with your tongue.
See a little
Let's
bit.
try your tongue. Yes, grab paper towels on the way. Come here so we can goop you. Oh. And then I want somebody with a skinny chin. Okay, we need to try skinny chin
I do
people
not
too.
have a skinny
I know
chin.
you don't, neither did she, but that's okay. Well, I don't know if it's going to make a difference. We're going to try you first.
And I would wear a turtleneck.
You
today.
would wear a turtleneck. You didn't know it was warm out today? All right.
I was cold. Well, it's cold in my job too. So.
Okay. You have to come close to me. There you go. Okay, chin down. Let's try. Okay, there we go. Let's try, again, just connected speech. See where we see the movement. When the sunlight strikes raindrops in the air.
When the sunlight strikes, raindrops in the air.
Oh, that air was good. Did you guys see that one? Try air again.
Air.
They act like a prism
They act like a prism
and form a rainbow.
and form a rainbow.
I can't see the hole in your tongue, though. Come. Don't bump into this. Do ear, chin down. Ear, R.
Ear, R.
Again.
Ear, R.
Do ear really slowly. Ear.
Ear.
Do once more.
Ear.
Now do ear.
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 I see it drop some. I'm not seeing a whole lot of movement there. And the hole in your tongue doesn't show up.
No.
All right. Skinny person.
Oh, napkin.
Yeah, definitely get that. Hold that. Thank you. This is just goopy. It's not terrible otherwise.
Realize forever, Katie, you're on video.
Come forward.
I forgot that this is being recorded.
Sorry about that. Chin down. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, chin down. Connected speech first.
Okay.
When the sunlight strikes raindrops in the air,
When the sunlight strikes raindrops in the air,
they act like a prism and form a rainbow.
they act like a prism and form a rainbow.
I'm going to try it here. When the sunlight strikes raindrops in the air.
When the sunlight
Whoops,
strikes
it's a slippery little beggar. Try it again.
when the sunlight strikes something,
Raindrops in the air.
raindrops in the air,
I'm going to try it back again. They act like a prism and form a rainbow.
they act like a prism and form a rainbow.
Okay, so that's so weird. So I'm thinking the dark gap is the space between the tongue and the palate. Okay, let's do some ears and R's. Try to get natural. Yeah, ear.
Ear,
Oh, that's good. R.
R,
No, ear is better. Ear.
ear,
Ear.
ear,
Good. Ear.
ear,
Tear.
tear.
Oh, that was cool. Did you see how low that one went?
Do it again.
We are here for their amusement. Tear.
Tear,
Keer.
keer,
Oh, yeah. That downward deflection. Okay, try L again. Eel.
eel,
Once more.
eel,
I thought we'd get more. I'm trying to get more of the lateral on the L. What would show that? Teal.
teal,
Once more.
teal.
I'm still not seeing a lot of lateral. Any other words that should give a contrast? It still seems to be tongue body that does the best, although that downward for the ear was good. Girl. Oh, lair is good. Let's try lair.
Lair.
Again, lair.
Lair.
So it looks like all lateral. Lair. That makes sense. Girl.
Girl.
Oh, that was cute at the end. Do that one again. Girl.
Girl.
All right, good. I think, clearly, there you go. This is different from the one that they have at NIH, which has like huge resolution. The thing I wish this one had, but we can't quite get, is the tip of the tongue, because that's what shows whether the whole body is moving or whether you can isolate the tongue tip. And I'm not sure why we can't get it with this. I think it's probably the resolution. But I want to thank Jennifer's mother for lending it to us and for Jennifer for bringing it in. That is way cool. I could just play with that stuff all day, well, except for the goopy part. All right, let me undo this. Thanks, Jennifer.
No problem.
If anyone else has cool toys at home, tell me. Okay, what I'd like to talk about next is the tongue twister project. And first I want to talk about what is a tongue twister and what isn't a tongue twister. And I want to play a couple things for you to help us kind of get a feel for that, and then talk about what the project entails and what to look for in a tongue twister. So the first one I want to show you is a scene from one of my favorite old movies. And I want you to decide when, I think it's Danny Kaye, when he's doing the connected speech bit, whether it's a tongue twister or not. So there's before and after the portion that we're really interested in, just so you can get an idea of the context.
Sire, may I present the incomparable Giacomo?
King of jesters and jester of kings.
Oh, yes, from Italy. I haven't been there for years. Tell me, how go things at the Italian court?
Very well indeed, sire.
Splendid, splendid. What about all those stories we've heard? Wasn't it awful about the Duchess of Alba?
Oh, just awful, sire.
I asked you, how could a thing like that happen?
Well, sire, you know the Italian court. What better place to court Italians?
Italian court? Court Italians. Oh, Ravenhurst, the fellow has wit. Well, I must say, I was shocked to hear about the Duchess. What did the Duke do?
Pardon?
The Duke. What did the Duke do?
The Duke do?
Yes. And what about the Doge?
Oh, the Doge.
What did the Doge do?
The Doge do?
Yes, the Doge do.
Well, the Doge did what a Doge does. When a Doge does his duty to a Duke, that is.
What? What's that?
Oh, it's very simple, sire. When the Doge did his duty and the Duke didn't, that's when the Duchess did the dirt to the Duke with the Doge.
Who did what to what?
Oh, they all did, sire. There they were in the dark. The Duke with his dagger, the Doge with his dart, and the Duchess with her dirk.
Duchess with her dirk?
Yes. The Duchess dug at the Duke just when the Duke dove at the Doge. Now, the Duke ducked, the Doge dodged, and the Duchess didn't. So the Duke got the Duchess got the Doge, and the Doge got the Duke.
Curious. What? What's it? All I heard was that the Duchess had a siege of rheumatism. She's 83, you know.
Oh, come next summer, sire.
So's the Duke?
So's the Duke. Remarkable, those Italians, well.
Love that scene. Is it a tongue twister? The bit with the Doge did the dirt to the Duchess with the Duke. That kind of thing.
I don't think so.
Okay, those of you who vote no, not a tongue twister. Why not?
The first phoneme is the same. It's always a D. The only thing that's changing is the follow that is after. So it's going from like U, O, ah.
And different ending sounds. The
Yeah.
Doge did the dirt to the Duchess
Yeah.
with the dirk. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other reasons it's not a tongue twister? How many of you thought it was a tongue twister? Why?
Because when you do your tongue is very close to where you're saying Duke. So the Duke
you're moving your tongue forward and then moving it back to produce the D. And then another step, your tongue is going another step back when you say the zh sound with douche or whatever you said.
Yeah. I tend to agree with people who don't believe it's a tongue twister because the sounds are dissimilar enough. So the sounds that are going to be the most difficult in a tongue twister are ones that only vary in one feature. Okay, so like the going to Duke varies in too many features. It's both place and manner of articulation that it varies. So the ones that we find the most likely to mix up are extremely similar in both place and manner of articulation. Okay, so that's why S and SH tend to be ones that are easily confused. The further away they are in terms of place of articulation, the less likely it is to be a tongue twister. The more consistent the sounds are, like the douche and the duchess and the doge and the dirk and all that, the less likely it is to be. It sounds really cool, but it's not really a tongue twister. So when auctioneers do the thing that makes them sound like they're talking really fast, bid it up, 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 it's not a tongue twister, because the sounds are, even though they're similar in manner, they're all plosives, bid it up, bid it up, bid it up. They're far enough from each other that it's just not that tricky. And plosives don't require the precision of articulation that fricatives do. So what sound do we produce that requires the most precise articulation? S. S is probably it. Because if you don't have exactly the right placement, too far forward, it turns into dentalized. Too far back, it turns into SH. If you don't have a narrow enough groove, you lose the high frequency component. So S requires a lot of precision, regardless of whether you do it with the tongue down or tongue up. So let me play a couple of others for you, and these I want to play in terms of thinking about how you're going to elicit whoever you use for a participant to produce the tongue twisters. So Emily brought this CD, and it's a kid's CD, and I want you to listen to how the kids elicit tongue twisters in somebody else. That should be playing. Could not complete your tunes request. It's not a tunes request. It's on a CD. Just a second. I'm not seeing any play here. Am I missing something? Ah. Okay, I thought I'd be able to play that. Let me tell you about it. The first one that I was going to play, the boy says, "Hey, I've got a tongue twister for you," and the girl, of course, is enticed, and he says, "Say it like this: she sells seashells by the seashore." Okay, is that going to elicit any problems? No. So he's trying to be nice, trying to guarantee success. If you're eliciting the tongue twister, how do you want to do it? You guys want to elicit somebody screwing up. Faster. Okay, so you want faster, you want co-articulation. You're going to ask for 5 repetitions in a row. Now with short ones, I'm not sure if somebody could do it on the she sells seashells one. On short ones, you're going to probably have people say it on one breath. She sells seashells by the sandy seashore. 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 Seashore. Finally, seashore. Okay. So you're going to have them do it 5 in a row, ideally on one breath. So when you transcribe it, you can do it line by line, but sometimes that can be confusing because sometimes you'll have an effect of the line above impacting the one right below it. So know that if your person is saying it all as one connected thing, that would actually be probably the better way to write it if you can fit it on the page. Okay? Because otherwise you might miss co-articulatory events that are impacting the other sounds. So ideally, find one that your participant can say on one breath. The other one that I was going to play is Betty Botter bought a bit of bitter butter. To make her batter better, she needed better butter. What's the potential confusion in the bit of better butter one? Yeah.
Whether it's a word with a D or 2 T's.
Everybody probably in American English will say it with the one-tap trill, the thing that's between the T and the D. Butter. Betty Butter bought a bit of bitter butter. What's more likely to be screwed up? Screwed up, yes. Does that negate the screwing up? Go ahead.
Not the initial sound, but the ones in the middle?
Yeah, the vowel sounds. It's one of the few where somebody would screw up a vowel sound. So I and eh are both not really anchor quantal vowels. Those would be the ones that somebody would screw up. But Betty Botter bought a bit of bitter butter goes on for eternity. So there's no way you could do it 5 times in a row. Okay? So let's go ahead and look at the assignment. So this is what you're going to be doing. You're going to give me the usual participant introduction. So what do you think would matter in terms of a person's articulatory prowess? What kinds of things do you need to include in that intro that will give me some idea of how they should be able to produce the tongue twister? Age. What do you think age is going to impact? How do you think age will impact proficiency?
How fast they can go. Like if they're younger, they're still in that learning curve. They're not going to be able to do it as fast as an adult would. Or if they're much older, like...
Oh, they're grinding to a halt again, right? Yeah. Okay, so the little guys, little kids are still developing motorically. They won't have as many syllables really well programmed to flip fluently off the tongue. An older person may have difficulty because their natural tendency may be to go too slow. You're going to have a speed-accuracy trade-off. Okay, so the slower somebody goes, the more accurate they'll be. You don't want that. You want them to do it as fast as they can because you want to see where the errors are elicited. So age will make a difference. What else will make a difference? What else do you need to tell me in that intro so I know what these people are like that matters?
Oral structure, like if they're missing teeth or malocclusions or...
Some oral structures will make a difference. So if it's a kid with 2 front teeth missing, or if it's an adult with bad-fitting dentures. The adult with bad-fitting dentures I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing. Find somebody whose teeth fit well, because you're going to confound the results otherwise. So broad condition of teeth. Don't worry. And you know, if they have tongue piercings and lip splittings and that kind of thing, that probably matters. But I would choose somebody as relatively intact as you can find.
If there's a disorder already present?
Yeah, don't do somebody with a disorder. Okay, find people who are developing normally or have no neurological problems. Yeah.
What about like an accent or somebody that's not a native speaker? Like would that affect their ability to do it?
Yeah, choose somebody who's a Native American speaker.
What about like just general body size? As far as, I mean, that would affect like whether they can say 5 times on one breath, but I don't know about.
I think that's all it would affect, though. You know, unless it's somebody whose tongue is like too big for their mouth, which does happen. But again, find somebody whose tongue fits. Yeah, Hillary.
Would theater experience?
You
the
bet.
person I'm looking at doing has done lots and lots and lots of theater.
Yes, their vocation, particularly singers and actors who do tongue twisters to warm up. They should be highly proficient. Okay, so you're welcome to use them. Know that it will be harder to elicit errors from them. Okay, so they'll need to do it maximally, and you may need to work to find a tongue twister that will actually trip them up. Okay? So one of the tricky things is to find a tongue twister that will elicit errors. Okay, some of the really, really popular ones, like Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, just are not tough for the reasons that we already talked about. Okay, my usual criteria is if it screws somebody up by the third try, it's good. If it screws them up on the first try, it's probably too hard. Okay, so you want something where they can get a couple out pretty well, but then the third try they kind of go, yeah, that wasn't quite it. So let me give you some examples of ones that work well and ones that don't. Actually, I think I have this written up here. So Peter Piper is a tough one. One that is so hard that it grinds people to a halt is the sixth sheep is sick. I can't do it fluently. So try them out on yourself. I would suggest you run through the list. If you have a list of personal favorites, run through those. Do them the way, yeah, you're hissing. Do them the way that you think you'd be able to elicit them from your participant. They should ideally consist only of one line. Okay, so the participant's going to say the tongue twisters ideally 5 times on one breath.
With the tongue twisters, we don't have to come up with them ourselves, right?
You do not. There's a list of tongue twisters right here. Now, I personally come up with tongue twisters a lot and have my whole family test them, and they actually tolerate it. And we go, yeah, that's a good one. So if you happen to come across any, that's fine. But here's a list. I would suggest that you go through it, find ones that you like, find ones that elicit errors in you by around the third one, and go ahead and use them. So they're going to say it 5 times, ideally on one breath. The tricky thing is you need to record it either on a computer, on a portable tape recorder, record it some way. I'm not sure that phone recorders are good enough, but you guys would have a better feel for that than I would. You have to be able to hear distortions, like does the S go to a TH or an SH? Okay, that's the kind of thing you want to listen for. You're going to have to listen several times to transcribe it. Okay, so be sure that you're not like looking at the words when you transcribe it, so that you're really listening for the sounds that the person says and can figure out exactly where it is that they started doing phonemic substitutions or distortions. Okay? So that's the part that you ought to be able to do so far. Okay? We're not quite to the point where you have all the information about how to interpret them, because we're going to talk a little bit more about co-articulation. In the meantime, the initial analysis would be how similar are the sounds in the tongue twister, and did they do the obvious thing like substitute an S for an SH or the other way around. Okay? So you can start collecting the data, you can start deciding what would be good, who you're going to ask to do it, that sort of thing. Questions? It's due the last day of class before midnight. Yes?
When we transcribe, do you want us to put like the diacritical marks and stuff, or just put the phonemes we hear?
If you think stress makes a difference, then put the stress markings in. Because that could impact whether a person makes a mistake or not. So for some people, for example, with apraxia of speech, they may be less likely to make a mistake on a stressed syllable than an unstressed one. So if you think it makes a difference, go ahead and do that. Otherwise, just go for a broad transcription. Other questions? Yeah.
I know we're turning the paper in online, but do you want us to physically turn in a copy of the transcription? And
no, you should be able to do that online too. That might be tricky. Let me see. If you can scan it, you can do it. If you can't scan it, let me know.
Can we type it in Pepperfont? Is that okay?
Yeah, if you have fonts that will do the transcription, that's great. If you don't, handwrite it and scan it, that would be fine too. Okay, but I really just want the electronic version. The last paper I had my motor speech class turn in, a number of them, much to my dismay, turned it in like at midnight. Don't do that. You know, if you're not perfectly synchronized with the time on the Turnitin clock, it won't take it. So, you know, make your own deadline like by 11:30, okay? If you have to be one of those kind of people. All right, questions? Yes. I think I put it in here. Let me see. April 30th at midnight, Thursday. Okay? So start that so we can answer any questions that you have as we go along. All right. What I want to do now is show you a video that's a really good overview of the source filter theory. And it's one that I never know is good to show before we talk about it completely or at the end. So I'm hoping this gives you an overview. One of the concepts that I want you to notice is it's about singers, and it talks about how they can tune the upper vocal tract to shift where their formant frequencies are. Okay, so we know that the formants are produced by how you shape the upper vocal tract. So if I go E-A-O, all the same source, different filter, different vowel sounds. Singers take that a step further and shift the formants to give them more acoustic power. So that's the part that I don't know is good now or would be better later on. But we'll give it a try. And then next time we meet, we'll get into the actual calculation of the formants. Now the only thing, a couple things I don't like about this. One is the really long intro. The other is it's a digitized person, and she looks like Lara from the Tomb Raider video games. If you see how Lara from the Tomb Raiders leaps walls, this person would do it the same way. But otherwise, it's pretty good. So this is an overview, and then all the details we'll get to next time. I think she might be the one who thought that the TMJ was just amazing. You'll recognize the voice. First, I thought it was just a really stilted live actor.
The human voice, so intricate, so able to express emotions and ideas. Imagine if we could only bark or grunt at each other.
Okay.
Imagine raising a family, building a city, or designing an airplane with voices that could only growl. Instead, we humans communicate with an incredible range of sounds, from all the sounds spoken in any language to the exquisite sounds of refined singing. With so many shades of tone, the human voice allows us to express the subtleties of our inner experience, binding us together profoundly. So why can the human voice produce such a wide range of tones? Part of the answer is that it has many parts, which we can see inside the body. The parts of the voice are in constant motion, working together to produce the streams of sound we use to communicate. We can broadly categorize these many parts according to their three basic functions. The parts involved with breath, which include the lungs, diaphragm, and the ribs and intercostal muscles. These parts primarily control inhalation and exhalation. The parts involved with phonation, which include the vocal folds and other muscles inside the larynx. These parts work together to chop the air into the pulses that begin sound. And finally, the parts involved in resonance, the reflections of those pulses, which occur in the air space that curves upward from the larynx to the lips. These parts include the lips, jaw, tongue, head, soft palate, and larynx. Together, all these parts of the voice push, pull, and shape the air inside the body. Even while singing a simple melody, the parts of the voice dramatically shape the air, molding it with many variations. As the parts of the voice shape the air goes into its own complex motions and rapid vibrations. While in motion, the air then pushes and pulls the parts of the voice. As if in an intricate dance, the physical parts move the air, and the air moves the physical parts, all in a complex and delicate system. The result? The air moving inside the body rhythmically taps the air outside the body at the lips and nostrils, sending the sound waves that ultimately beat against someone's ears. Being so flexible, the parts of the voice can push, pull, and shape the air in many ways, and the air inside the body responds in many ways, ultimately tapping an endless variety of waves on the outside air, the endless variety of our vocal tones. The intricate dance between the parts of the voice and the air is complex, but thanks to Joseph Fourier, a scientist in the 19th century, we can better understand it by looking at the resulting sounds. Fourier showed us how to see sounds, how to see an analysis of what sounds are made of. What we're seeing is an analysis of each sound on a chart called a spectrum of partials. Fourier created mathematical formulas that split each sound into its component parts, somewhat like the way a prism splits light into its component colors.
Partials are the same as harmonics.
In this chart, each bar represents a single part of a sound, which scientists call a partial, a pure, simple tone, one that cannot be split any further. Each bar represents a specific frequency, which is the speed of vibration. When sounded all at once, these partials become a single complex sound, just as primary colors mixed all at once become a single complex color. The height of each bar represents the amplitude, which is the loudness or softness of that partial. The height of the bar reflects how much of that partial is mixed into the overall sound. The sound's timbre comes from the relative proportion of the partials, just as a color's tint comes from the relative proportions of its pigments. In this example, for instance, only the relative proportions of the same partials change, and we hear different vowels and tone qualities. For instance, in these sounds we see a pattern of evenly spaced partials, a pattern called an harmonic series. We label this pattern a periodic sound because the sound repeats itself, sustaining the sound even if just for a short while. We typically see an harmonic series with vowel sounds or sung tones. With the clicking and popping sounds of consonants, we see a different pattern, one in which the partials appear randomly. We describe these sounds as aperiodic sounds, or simply noise, because any given partial does not typically repeat. In the sound of a word such as speech, we see the random pattern of the consonants surrounding the evenly spaced pattern of the vowel. The spectrum of partials and their easy-to-see patterns can help us better understand the complexities of the human voice. To see how, we need to separate the parts of the voice into two halves and move the larynx and lungs to one side and the air column beyond it. These two basic parts represent the source of the sound and the filter, the two pillars of the source filter theory which describes how the voice works. Let's look at the source first, the intricate movements within the larynx that initiate sound. Here, along these fleshy walls, the vocal folds shape the air streaming up from the lungs into pulses of pressure. Instead of one pair of muscles to influence the vocal folds, we have many pairs, all working together to influence the intricate dance between the vocal folds and the air. Together they create a level of flexibility and complexity that allows us to shape the pulses in many ways. For the many different pulses we can create, however, we vary them in only three ways: their frequency, amplitude, and shape. We can easily see these three differences by visualizing the contours of those pulses, the shape of the pressure changes. First, to change the frequency of the pulses, the vocal folds must change the number of pulses they mold per second. We generally perceive these changes as the pitch going up and down. Through Fourier's analysis of these sounds, we can see these differences reflected in the spectrum of partials. The first partial corresponds to the number of pulses per second. It moves further up the chart as the pulses increase in frequency. Musicians sometimes call the first partial the fundamental and all the other partials the overtones. Notice that as the first partial moves up and down, all the other partials move up and down too. Notice also that the other partials spread apart evenly as the first partial goes up. and close together evenly as the first partial goes down. All because the higher partials are multiples of the first partial. This means that as the frequency rises, the sound has fewer and fewer partials, which we hear as the flute-like high sound of sopranos or the light falsetto sound of tenors. In other words, we hear what sounds more and more like a pure tone. And when the frequency lowers, the sound has more partials, which we hear as the rich, buzzy sounds of the low voice. Let's look at the second way the vocal folds can vary the pulses. During their dance with the air, the vocal folds can vary the amplitude of the sound by how much pressure is in the air coming through the vocal folds. We can see the pressure increase and decrease. We can generally hear these changes as loudness and softness of the sound going up and down. Or, as a singer might say, we hear a change in the dynamic level. We can see these changes reflected in the spectrum of partials as well. The first partial becomes taller and shorter. Notice that when the first partial becomes taller, all the other partials, the overtones, become taller too. Our ears detect these subtle differences. Even while changing the frequency, we can detect the amplitude change, decreasing or increasing. For the third variation, the vocal folds dance with the air to vary the shape of the pulse coming through. We can better see how they shape the pulse if we cut away the back portion of the vocal folds to see inside. As the vocal folds open and close evenly, we see the evenly shaped pulses they form. The more even the pulse, the more we hear the tone quality as mellower, softer, purer. As the vocal folds close faster than they open, we see the shape become more and more lopsided, like a pear. The more quickly the vocal folds close, the more we hear the tone quality become brighter, brassier. As a singer would say, we hear the timbre or the register change from the brassy, brilliant, penetrating sounds to the mellower, smoother sounds. We can again see these changes reflected clearly in the spectrum of partials. The quicker the vocal folds close, the higher the upper partials rise in amplitude, which shows us their relative proportion mixed into the overall sound. Notice that the overall slope becomes shallower and the sound becomes brassier. The more evenly the vocal folds close and open, the lower the upper partials sink in amplitude. Notice that the slope becomes steeper and we hear the sound become mellower. The slope can become so steep that it loses its upper partials, a sound quality that begins to resemble a pure tone, a single partial, as is the case when a male sings more into his falsetto voice, or when a female sings into her light, pure voice. By varying the frequency, amplitude, and shape all at once, we create myriad variations in the sound. In the spectrum, we see these variations as the frequency and number of partials, the amplitude of the first partial, and the slope of the other partials. And we hear these three variations as differences in pitch, dynamic levels, and timbre. But the sounds from the source look different from the final sounds we hear. Though both have the same partials, the proportions are different. This is because the voice adds yet one more level of complexity to give us the wide range of sounds: the filter. The air between the larynx and the lips, the air column we see here, filters the sounds from the source, reducing the amplitudes of the partials. When we change the shape of the air column, we change the partials it filters. Just as sunglasses filter colors from sunlight, the air column filters partials from the sound at the larynx. To see how it filters the partials from the source, we can visualize another kind of spectrum, a long box that shows how much the air column filters each partial. If the air column allowed all of the partials to come through intact, that is, if it didn't filter any of them, the sound we hear would look and sound just like the sound at the source. If it allowed 1/2 of the partial's amplitude to come through, the sound we hear would look 1/2 the amplitude of the source. If it allowed 1/4 of the partial's amplitudes to come through, it would look smaller still. But the air column is not so neat. It is selective, filtering some partials more than others. Consequently, we see peaks and valleys showing how the air column favors some partials over others. We can see how a peak affects an individual partial. It raises or lowers the partial's amplitude depending on how closely it corresponds to the partial. As it changes, it allows more or less of the partial's amplitude to reach the outside air, changing its contribution to the overall sound. The filter affects each partial from the source, changing its relative proportion while simultaneously changing the others, adding tremendous variety to our range of sounds. We can see the outline of peaks and valleys reflected in the final sound we hear. The peaks and their relationship to each other define sounds so distinctly that scientists give them a special name: formants. By changing the size and shape of the air column, we affect the resonance, the resounding of the tones, as they reflect back and forth in the air column. When we raise or lower the jaw, for instance, we enlarge or shrink the front part of the air column. As the jaw steadily opens, we hear the vowel change continuously. Looking at the spectrum, we can see that the movement of the jaw has a strong influence on the first peak. The more it opens, the more the first peak moves forward, allowing higher tones to come through. When we move the arch of the tongue, we affect where and how much we narrow the air column between the pharynx and the mouth. Notice how the narrow part moves from the forward to the back portion, the locations that we use to categorize vowels as forward and back vowels. Looking at the spectrum, we see that the movement of the tongue has a strong influence on the second peak. The spectrum allows us to see the pattern. The first two peaks come together and spread apart. Our ears detect this pattern of filtering. We recognize the relative positions of the peaks as our different vowels. When there are plenty of partials, the pattern is easy to detect in the resulting sound. However, when there are fewer partials, for instance when females sing high pitches, we cannot discern the vowels because there are not enough partials to fall into the patterns of the two peaks. Only the vowels ah and allow the spread of partials to make it through. Our ears detect changes in other peaks as well. Of particular interest to singers, we hear a peak somewhere around 3,000 cycles per second, which adds a high proportionate mix to the overall sound that singers describe as the ring to the voice. It is usually called the singer's formant. By moving any body part that lines the air column, we change its size and shape and change which partials from the larynx it filters. We humans exploit this flexibility. By combining variations in the source with variations in the filter, we can create an incredible range of sounds. We use this flexibility to produce the phonemes, inflections, and tone qualities of our expressive languages. As another example, singers exploit this flexibility to manage the full, rich sounds of singing. In this F major scale, for instance, a singer has trained her voice to match the first partial of the source with the first peak of the filter, coordinating them for what is sometimes called optimum resonance. A less skilled singer might pair the first partial with a valley, weakening the sound. Notice that the amplitude of the first partial is diminished, weakening the sound. By carefully choreographing all the partials from the source with the peaks of the filter, a singer can learn to maximize the fullness and flexibility of the voice. The source and the filter work together in one integrated system, a fine instrument that is driven by the whole human body to produce an incredible range of sounds. The flexibility and complexity of the human voice allows us to move far beyond merely grunting or barking at each other and frees us to produce enough combinations of distinctive sounds to express our thoughts, emotions, and needs. With this ability, the human voice connects us, serving our humanity with grace.
Didn't know the Tomb Raider could sing, huh? I feel like I should be barking. Okay, so next time we will talk about sort of the nuts and bolts of how to calculate all that sort of thing. That's just an overview. So come with questions, but we're going to go through it really, really, really step by step. Be sure you bring a calculator and have a good afternoon.